The story you're about to see begins with a problem that many people believe is permanent, and it starts right here on the map. For decades, this was considered an impossible place to build. This road stretches roughly 4,500 kilometers across Sahara, one of the harshest environments on Earth. Temperatures here can approach 50 degrees Celsius. The ground is not fixed, the sand shifts constantly. Pushed by wind across open terrain, engineers had to design a highway capable of withstanding moving desert terrain. Let's move to another part of the road network. Because while the desert road tested engineering, this road tested something even harder. This road took 8 years to carve through equatorial rainforest. They built over 30 bridges. They walked through 6-month monsoons that turned construction zone into swamp. When they finished, a journey that used to take a week dropped to 6 hours. And this road, this one on the map right here, for decades travelers had a name for it. They call it the road to hell. And this is where it gets really interesting. These are not 3 separate road projects, they are part of the same network. One road grid, 56,000 kilometers, longer than the circumference of the Earth. 9 highways, nearly 40 countries, the largest coordinated road ever attempted across sovereign borders. But this section of the road, right here, through nearly 1,500 kilometers of the continent's interior, the highway simply does not exist. Even in 2026, there is no continuous paved road across the middle of Africa. Some section of this network took decades to build, and the story of how this is finally changing is one of the most remarkable infrastructure projects unfolding today. But the story begins with a map that raises more questions than it answers. When African nations gained independence in the 1950s and 60s, they inherited road systems that was built for extraction. Colonial powers had connected mines to ports, plantations to harbors, always outward toward European markets. Almost nothing connected African nations to each other. In 1971, a Ghanaian economist named Robert Gardiner looked at this broken map and proposed something that had never been attempted: a continental road grid. 9 highways designed to connect every region of Africa, north to south, east to west, not for extracting resources outward, for moving goods, people and opportunities between African nations. The idea was brilliant, but the timing terrible. Debt crisis in the 1980s drained the budget. Wars across Central and West Africa destroyed the little infrastructure that was left at that time. For nearly 3 decades, the Trans-African Highway was a plan on paper, but plans have a way of resurfacing when economic incentive becomes too strong to ignore. Africa launched the largest free trade zone on Earth, the African Continental Free Trade Area, covering 54 nations and 1.4 billion people. The World Bank estimates it could boost continental income by $450 billion by 2035 and lift 30 million people from extreme poverty. But free trade is meaningless without physical roads to move goods. The Trans-African Highway went from a nice idea to an economic necessity overnight. Funding started flowing in from every direction: the African Development Bank, China's Belt and Road, the European Union Global Gateway, the United States, Japan. At the Luanda Financing Summit in October 2025, $18 billion was mobilized in a single event for 38 infrastructure projects. African Road Network was no longer a dream, it was a construction site, and the result were extraordinary. Let me show you 3. This is the Trans-Sahara Highway, a 4,500 kilometer continental spine linking Algiers on the Mediterranean to Lagos on the Atlantic. Straight through the heart of the largest hot desert on the planet, and it is 98% complete. Algeria took the lead, and over 5 decades, paved its entire 2,400 kilometer section to full modern standard. By 2025, the overall highway was declared nearly sealed. But getting here requires solving engineering problems that don't exist anywhere else on the earth. In the deep Sahara, temperatures exceed 50 degrees Celsius. Sand dunes don't just surround the road, they migrate across it overnight, burying freshly laid asphalt under meters of sand within hours. Flash floods rip through dry riverbeds that haven't seen rain in years, and the nearest supply depot might be hundreds of kilometers away. The solution was ingenious, a 40-wide right-of-way far wider than any standard highway designed to absorb sand encroachment. Upright fences redirect wind patterns. Engineers didn't just build a road through the desert, they reshaped the desert around the road. The funding reflected strategic importance. The OPEC Fund, the Islamic Development Bank, and the African Development Bank all contributed because this highway, once fully sealed, directly links 300 million people across 6 nations to the Mediterranean trade route, a land bridge between sub-Saharan Africa and Europe. The Trans-Sahara Highway is a proof of concept, an African-led project built through one of the most hostile environments on the planet, nearly complete after decades of work. But if Sahara tested engineering, the next story tested something even harder: raw human endurance. The Republic of Congo, Central Africa, and a 535-kilometer highway that locals call the Dream Road. Before this road was built, the journey between Brazzaville, Congo's capital, and Pointe-Noire, its economic hub, and the main port took 1 week, sometimes 2. The route was mud track through Mayombe forest that became impassable during 6-month rainy season. Trucks sank to their axles, passengers abandoned vehicles and walked. In 2008, the China State Engineering Construction Corporation began what would become one of the most punishing construction projects of the modern era. Workers waded through waist-deep marshes. More than half the Chinese construction crew contracted malaria. They walked through monsoon's rain that turned the construction zone into swamp for 6 months of every year. They built over 30 bridges across rivers and gorges. They planted vetiver grasses on every slope to prevent erosion from washing the road into the jungle. It took 8 years and it cost roughly 2 billion euros. And when it opened, the journey from Brazzaville to Pointe-Noire dropped from 1 week to 6 hours. Daily traffic went from 100 vehicles to over 4,000. Market formed along the route. Communities that had been isolated for generations suddenly had access to hospitals, schools, and the national economy. This was not just a road, it was a lifeline. And it proved something critical, that you can build modern infrastructure through one of the most challenging environments on earth, the tropical rainforest of Congo Basin, if you have the commitment and the capital. Now, imagine that transformation repeated, not over 500 kilometers, but across an entire continent. That's exactly what's happening right now on the third corridor. And this one has a story that starts with a road so bad, travelers call it the road to hell. 505 kilometers through northern Kenya, from Isiolo to Moyale on the Ethiopian border. For decades, this was one of the most notorious roads of the African continent and bandit territory, a journey that could destroy a vehicle and take days. Today, it's smooth tarmac from end to end, built with $420 million in funding from African Development Bank and China Exim Bank. The road was completed between 2016 and 2017, and the impact was immediate. Northern Kenya, a region long considered remote, underdeveloped and disconnected, was suddenly accessible. Commerce with Ethiopia surged. Pastoralist communities that had depended on dirt tracks to reach market could now get their livestock and goods to buyers in hours instead of days. The road didn't just connect 2 countries, it unlocked an entire region. And this is what makes the Trans-African Highway story so compelling. Every section that gets completed tells the same story. Population grows, markets form, income rise, travel times collapses. It happens in the Sahara, it happens in Congo Basin, it happens in Kenya Highland. The pattern is universal. In northeastern Central African Republic, 900 kilometers of road rehabilitation caused the regional population to grow by 35% in 5 years, as 88,000 displaced people returned home. In Malawi, a completed highway section cut travel from 6 hours to under 2, and car ownership in one village went from 1 person to 13. In Liberia and Ivory Coast, a 372 kilometers paved road became the anchor for clinics, markets, and schools. The evidence is overwhelming. Roads transform Africa faster and more profoundly than almost any other investment. The question is no longer whether to build, it is how fast. So, how much of this 56,000 kilometer network is actually finished? The honest answer, it depends on the corridor. One highway, the Trans-Sahelian from Dakar to N'Djamena, is essentially 100% complete. The Trans-Sahara is at 98%. The Cairo to Cape Town corridor is roughly 80% paved. West Africa Coastal Highway is over 80% done. But there are sections that remain genuinely unfinished. Central Africa, particularly the Democratic Republic of Congo, still has corridors where no paved road exists at all. The Lagos to Mombasa Highway has a 1,500 kilometer gap through the DRC's equatorial rainforest, and the world's two closest capital cities, Brazzaville and Kinshasa, separated by just a few kilometers of river, are still connected only by ferry, while a bridge planned since 1990s inches towards construction. These gaps are real, but they are not permanent. They are the next frontier. And the capital is arriving at a pace never seen before. The total cost to finish the entire Trans-African Highway is estimated at about $32 billion. To put that into perspective, the United States spends more than that every year maintaining its existing interstate. The 2022 Qatar World Cup cost nearly 7 times more. And the money is mobilizing. African Development Bank invested $55 billion in infrastructure in the last 8 years. China's Belt and Road Initiative backed roughly 1/5 of all African infrastructure projects. The EU's Global Gateway is targeting 150 billion euros. The United States mobilized over 4 billion for the Lobito corridor in Angola in under 18 months. This is a major project. Do you think Africans have the will to actually come together and complete this project? If you like definitive infrastructure projects like this, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comment section about any projects happening within your country that I have not talked about, or any project that you are interested in that you want me to talk about in the comment section. See you on the next one.